We used to get up at 4:30 every morning, go in our little red van into the fruit market. It's a real masculine environment. And here we rocked in as these two 24-year-old lads who came out of college, wore shorts all year round, feckin' yuppies. Who the fuck? Give them 2 months. 2 months, lads. There's no way they're going to stick with this.
And thank goodness they did stick with it, because David and Stephen Flynn, aka the Happy Pear, have built one of the best known and loved food brands in Ireland. And they've been a seriously positive and disruptive force for good along the way. And we hear all about that journey in this episode of Food Matters. Welcome back to the show. I'm Mick Kelly, and in this series I'm meeting the people who are reconnecting us with real, healthy, sustainable food. They tell us why food matters to them and why it should matter to you too. It's 20 years now since David and Stephen Flynn began the Happy Pear, and what a roller coaster it has been. They've had such a positive impact on how we eat in Ireland and have contributed so much to our understanding of the healing power of food. But they've also had their fair share of tough times. They've been embroiled in some controversies about health claims made on their podcast, and as they say themselves, their colourful personalities can sometimes attract the wrong kind of attention. So I was delighted to welcome them here to the GOI studio, where they reflected on all of the highs and lows of the last 2 decades, as well as what's next for the Happy Pear.
How do you know you're one of those vegan? It's like someone will tell you very quick enough, you know, that way. You're one of those annoying vegans. So initially we were one of those righteous vegans and we were very preachy, but we realised like you attract more wasps with honey rather than vinegar. Make it attractive rather than demonise it by going, why aren't you vegan? What are you doing eating that? And we found the message of eat more veg is a lot more digestible. He left with a cheque for 2.5 million in his wallet, and we walked down Graft Street, and I remember being so nervous.
And it was Christmas Eve, so there was no banks open, so he had to have it in his pocket for 8 days. You know, a cheque for 2.5 million.
And I remember being like, absolutely going, I feel like I'm in a movie. Like, what the hell?
20 years is a long time that you've got to constantly adapt to recessions and ups and downs and ideas you started and retract, and you know, so it's been a constant adapting to failure.
I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. It's really thought-provoking, and you're hopefully going to learn a lot about food, health and business, and the personalities behind the Happy Pear brand too. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so it is so good to have you guys here. I'm so chuffed, and finally to get you to see Grow HQ, because we've been on and off over the years chatting about this place, but your first visit as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, I remember meeting you before this place was born, and it was an idea in your head, and now to come here and sit here and go, geez, it's very impressive.
We got the option to do this remotely or come in person. It's like, we're definitely coming in person. Like, you know, I've no problem driving 2 hours each way. I want to see, you know.
It's brilliant for you to get to see it, and we'll hopefully get to give you a proper tour of the place later on. But we're not here to talk about Grow HQ. You guys have got your new book out, which is sitting proudly in front of us here. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and it feels like a very intentional like moment of kind of reflection, because there's a big 20 on the front cover. You know, it's not just another book in a series of very prolific output over the years that you've had. It's a hell of an achievement, 20 years in business. Like, how are you feeling? Does it feel like that kind of reflective moment?
Yeah, I think like we're like yourself, we're kind of always looking over the next hill. And I think this, even yesterday, we got to open, like, I guess so much of life is stored for social media. And it was like, okay, this is a moment. You got to, Kiva, who works with us, and she's the social media queen. She was like, you're not allowed to open that book until I'm filming it. We want to get live reactions.
You can't fake it, the second reaction.
No. So we opened it yesterday, and it was only through looking at it. Like, fair enough, you've spent a good year going through it and looking at proofs and writing recipes and scrolling through photos, and actually to open it and look through it and touch it and feel it and look at the photos and share it with the kids. It was a moment of reflection, because 20 years, it's so easy to say it, and I think it's a bit like anyone who's listening who's a parent, it's a bit like parenting. Like
it goes so quick, but there's so many, like, it feels so long as well. Both the irony, it's double, it's two.
And I guess even last night we were in Dublin, and we were at Dublin Fruit Market. There happened to be a nightmare, a Halloween type thing that we went to, but it was gas being a Dublin Fruit Market, and to think 20 years ago, we used to get up at 4:30 every morning, go in our little red van into the fruit market. And like the fruit market, if anyone listening ever went to the Smithville fruit market, it's like, it was nepotism. It was like you got into it from your parents and your parents' parents, and it was real.
Sons got into it from their fathers. That's kind of what. But it was no real women.
It was a real masculine environment. It was macho. It was like just lads slagging each other. No women worked there really, and if women did work there, they were tough as boots. And here we rocked in as these two 24-year-old lads who came out of college, wore shorts all year round, feckin' yuppies, went to feckin' college. Who the give them 2 months?
There's no way they're going to stick with this.
And what were you doing? Were you selling juices or?
Well, we started with a vegetable shop. So even just to give a context, like we grew up, we're identical twins. And being identical twins, you come out of the womb competing for love and attention. So therefore, we became overachievers because we were always subconsciously competing for our mother's love and attention.
Which is the better twin?
Yeah, which is the better twin. So by the time we were...
Have you resolved that issue?
I think we've kind of parked it to a degree. I don't know.
Dave's definitely the better
one. It peeks its head up every now and again. So it meant by the time we were 20, we were both playing off scratch and golf. We played semi-professional rugby. We did modelling because it was a good way of meeting girls. So we got social recognition for that. We played baseball for Ireland.
Not that was a big achievement. If you played baseball, you were on the national team.
And we ended up studying business because it was, we didn't care what we studied. Went to all boys schools, and college was just a way of meeting girls. And then we got to the end of college, and I remember you kind of said to me, I don't buy into what that kind of idea of money makes you happy, because that was the kind of subtext of studying business, was that if you make loads of money, if you become a stockbroker, like then you'll be fulfilled, you're successful, you're happy. Steve turns to me one day, we just turned 22, I think, and he says to me, Dave, I'm going away traveling. I'm going by myself, so that means you're not coming with me, and I'm not coming back till I'm happy. That's what he says, the 22-year-old. And we had been these two absolutely quintessential jocks, like meat and two veg, loads of beer. Like we were the classical, jocks. And we both went away on these journeys of self-discovery. This is in 2000. Wandered around the world for a couple of years and realised that we found this love of food and how it was a crossroad between health, planetary health, everything. Politics literally starts in your plate, and we ended up changing our own diets, giving up alcohol, getting into spirituality, like a complete turnaround. And then we came back as 24-year-olds. We were now not jocks. We were absolute quintessential hippies. We'd long hair, plaid pants. We painted our fingernails because we were different.
And we didn't use soap, man, because it was bad.
And lo and behold, we wanted to start a vegetable shop to inspire people to eat more veg. So people really thought we'd lost our way. So in 2004 we started a little vegetable shop which we called it the Happy Pear because there was two of us and we were selling fruit, but we nearly called it and literally it wouldn't fit across the sign. The sign man was up there trying to put it on and he said it won't work, and we nearly called it Flinner's Fruit and Veg for Social Change. That was the context with which we were going into this. It was all about, we had changed our lives dramatically.
I wanted to start it as a charity. Yeah. Because it wasn't about money. This is the antithesis of someone who did a degree and a master's. It was like, this is not about money. This is about changing the world. I want the medium of food to create a happier, healthier world and build community. And that was the trust, the essence, the juice of the vegetable.
You've got a farm now, and there's another brother involved there as well, I think.
All the brothers are involved.
Were you growing, though, at that stage? Or was it just like it was wholesale veg?
Wholesale veg. And it was originally, I guess... We all have this idea, this illusion of Ireland. It's green Ireland. It's great. We're so good at growing vegetables. And I guess the more we learned from having our own fruit and veg shop, going into the fruit market, knowing local farmers, about 80% of the veg that we were selling and that people were purchasing was from Holland. And Holland is a quarter the size of Ireland, and yet it's one of the greatest exporters of produce in the world. And it was like, wow, we really do not grow that much veg in this country. And our brother Dara, that's our youngest brother, he was doing triathlons for Ireland at the time, and he was looking for the edge. And he found out through his own, I guess, experimentation on diet, through eating more living foods such as alfalfa sprouts, mung bean sprouts, wheatgrass, sunflower seeds, pea shoots, he found he could recover quicker. And, anyone who's an athlete knows that the holy grail of athletic performance is the ability to recover. If you can recover, you can train harder. So he was horsing into the sprouts and the living foods. And he was like, oh my God, this is the most nutritious food. Why isn't everyone doing this? So our granny had died around that time. God rest the great May Flynn. And she left 10 grand to the lads. And Dara, we all said, Dara, you take it and let's start a sprout farm. So we started growing sprouts. So we've had about 15 years more probably of growing sprouts and living foods. And it's only in the last 2 years we've started a 4-acre organic regenerative farm, and that is beautiful.
Yeah.
We love it.
We'll definitely come back to that, right? Because you know that we're trying to do similar things here, I suppose, from an organic farm, and how difficult it is, I suppose, as well, to be honest about it. But I'm interested in something you said at the very beginning there, which is like chasing after like your mother's approval. And like I can completely empathize with that. We were talking about this downstairs, that you're like, I'm constantly chasing the next thing. And as a result, like never really appreciating some of the amazing things. Like, have you found a balance there where you can kind of you can still be ambitious and chase, you know, do amazing projects, but actually get to enjoy it? Because I think that's the problem for a lot of entrepreneurs, and you guys are among the best we have. Do you feel like you found that balance?
Definitely got better. I'd say it's all relative. I think it's a bit like there's a scale. And I definitely look at us in our 30s and, you know, we were completely that, like we were always looking over the next ditch and so driven. Whereas now we're in our 40s, we're about 44. You know, you've got a bit more experience about what's really important, and you've enough context of other people. You see other friends that have really sacrificed their health to try to accumulate wealth. Whereas I think we've really created, our lives are very bountiful in relationships and community and doing stuff we love. And that's I think been the real driver. Like now we both get to walk our kids to school pretty much every day. We, you know, the quality of life is high, and I think we do prioritize family hugely.
But it's a work in progress, like, you know.
Yeah, we're addicts to a degree, like,
you know, like I guess
addicted to the success or the
addicted
project,
to the drive, to being driven, to always having a focus or some kind of.
And I also think modern day society celebrates external validation. You know, it's about the image. And like, even to go a little bit metaphysical, like I think how we grow food is how our society typically functions. And now we live in an industrial food system where a lot of the industrial food, or the output of the industrial food system, is monocrops grown with short roots that lack depth and lack nutrients. We live in a society which celebrates appearance and celebrates the aesthetic, but often it lacks the depth of character, and it lacks the spine, and it lacks the connection to, you know, something possibly greater than the wonderful human and the accumulation of wealth. I think going a bit bigger and linking food to how we interact and how we live our lives, I think the nature of GIY is to connect people to their food system, grow their own food, and to get their hands in the soil. And I think things like this, and even us having our 4-acre organic farm, it's really enabled us to get our hands in the ground and to reconnect with the earth and feel a part of the landscape, and to connect into the natural rhythm of the nature. Like, we live in urban, you know, 70% of people in the West live in urban environments, and there's a pulse to cities, and everyone needs coffee. Here I am drinking coffee, ironically, but we need that pulse. We need stimulants, we need sugar, we need coffee, we need alcohol, we need social media, you know, because it's a pulse, it's a drive. Whereas you go out to nature and it's like you're accepted for who you are, and you just suddenly feel,
Two things that jump to mind for me, like, people have opinions about you guys, right? Let's just say that, but say whatever you like. There's an utter authenticity to the way you've done this and built the brand, that it's like, I think everybody would sort of say, okay, I feel like those guys are healthy. You know, they live the way they want other people to live. That's what strikes me about it, that the success of it is grounded in an utter authenticity.
We're definitely moving too fast, and there's no way you could put up a show. Yeah, you know, there's way too much going on in our lives to have a split personality. You know, they're packed from.
And I think, like, the very at the inception of the Happy Pear, a quote that always was very resonated with me. Yes, correct, thank you. 1 point for David. It was Gandhi's quote, that famous one, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And for me, the ideals that I'm a total idealist and a dreamer, and the Happy Pear, I guess, is built on ideals. And it's like, let's put these into practice. Let's not talk them, let's not philosophize them, let's actually try to be the change we want to see in the world. So we wanted to use the medium of food to bring people together, to encourage them to eat more veg, because in Ireland and the UK and America, so most Western societies, approximately 90% of people don't get enough fibre. And fibre you only get in fruits, veg, beans, legumes, nuts and seeds, and whole grains. And fibre is a prebiotic. It's, I guess, fundamental to all aspects of human health.
And I guess you look at our, you know, the biggest cause of disease nowadays, our diet-related disease. You know, that's the biggest cause. So we're literally, our food system and how we grow food and how we eat food is making us diseased. So I think our mission at the Happy Pear...
You're saying that very intentionally as dis-ease.
Disease, yeah,
disease,
ultimately, like that's, definitely intentionally that. Yeah. But very much from the inception, the Happy Pear was all about, we had changed our diets to eat a plant-based diet. And our message is never about vegan or vegetarian. It really isn't. It's not about these, we're all going to die anyway. It's about eating more veg and eating more whole, real foods, because ultimately our bodies are going to function better. And health is something that most of us, when we're young, we take for granted. We just assume, I'm always going to be healthy. I'm always going to be well. I coach a lot of people, do healthy lifestyle coaching with them. And it's a lot of people that have waited too long. They've waited till they're sick to actually change. And they're going, I wish I'd prioritized it. But that's the reality. Most people don't prioritize their health until they get some kind of a scare or some kind of health shock.
Yeah. A friend of mine, like I turned 50 this year. And to your point, like he was saying to me, that your 50s are sometimes called Sniper Alley. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I've definitely heard of it.
Where they're like the four horsemen of the apocalypse diseases, like the diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer are hunting you down. And like, it's the most fucking terrifying thing I've ever heard, But like, to your point, like you can't get away with it for very long. In your 40s and 50s and 60s, that's when, not looking after your body really starts to cause you problems.
Health is the accumulation of actions that we do on a daily basis, and they often say your health in your 40s was started in your 20s, your health in your 50s was started in your 30s, and we become
that's a bit worrying when I think about my 30s.
And like health, we forget that like life is contagious. For example, like when we used to go into just to tell a small little story, when we used to go into the fruit market initially, this is in Smithfield. There was a lot of farmers coming in and bringing in produce, and it was real hustle and bustle of farmers coming in and buying produce, and the excitement of the first of the Irish potatoes in their queens.
There'd be an auction.
Or the first of the strawberries, and it was a real celebration. And over time, it quickly moved from this decentralised food system to suddenly there was like a 40-foot truck of oranges would come in, and what do you want? Do you want 48s? Do you want 100? Or do you want 80s? And it's like, that's referring to the size. And they come out more like oranges from a factory. You're like, these didn't grow on a tree. Like, this is a factory. So like our food system, we literally saw it transform in front of our eyes.
To where Smithfield Fruit Market doesn't exist anymore. Like, as we said, we were there last night.
And to bring it back to your question, is that like, when we'd buy a box of oranges and there'd be one rotten orange in the corner, if I left that for a week, the whole box would be rotten. For example, in this room here, if I yawn, you're likely to yawn, or Patrick behind the desk here is likely to yawn too. Like, health is contagious. We're a social species. Good health and ill health are contagious. And it's not saying if you have unhealthy friends or obese friends, don't be friends with them anymore. It's about just moving more towards create the environment you want. If you look to the longest populations in the planet, the blue zones, the reasons why they live such long, happy, satisfied lives is because the healthy choice is the easy choice. And that's the secret to health.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. That health is a habit. No, I see it time and time again, and it's for anyone listening who's kind of going, geez, like this is so inaccessible.
Easy for you, lads.
Yeah, it's so easy. You've been doing it for so long. But it's literally like it's making simple changes that choose the brown pasta instead of the white pasta.
Yeah.
If you're having a chicken curry, add a tin of chickpeas in it. Instead of eating cornflakes for breakfast, like start eating porridge. And these compound over the years. These compound like over the weeks, the months, the years, the decades, because time goes quick, and very quickly, over a decade, if you've got a lot more fibre in your diet, your immune system is stronger, your mental health will be better, you'll be much more physically resilient and able to take these horsemen when they show up.
Yeah, those fuckers. Yeah. I'm really curious though then about, like, so you guys are, like, I love that fact that you came from that kind of greengrocer kind of pedigree almost of the brand is brilliant, I think. But like, you're also then, I go into any supermarket in this country and I'm probably going to see your brand on the shelves. So it has become part of the big food system, the way it's set up. And like, I'm just curious because I think GIY shares that view that we've got to, like, there's no point in us preaching to the choir, as it were. You have to try and mainstream food growing. You have to try and mainstream plant-based eating. Is that balance been tricky for you to kind of, you could suck in and come back and just do your stuff in Greystones, but you've deliberately gone after the mass market as well.
Yeah, like, I guess the philosophy, as Stephen said right from the start, was always about getting people to eat more veg. And still 20 years on, the business has gone from that first veg shop to now where there's, food products. We've got 80 food products. We've sold 20 million of them across Ireland. So sold a lot of them.
In Super Value and
Super Value and Centra. Those are all about trying to make it easier for people to make healthier choices, because they do all have clean decks of ingredients. There's no nasties. And we've really had to work so hard to do that. And it's been challenging because you've got to compromise right across the way, because the packaging, no matter how wonderful it is, it's still not perfect.
It's not a banana leaf, like.
Yeah.
It's not a banana leaf, and you're bound by what options there are, and you've got to hit a certain price point to be realistic. It's got to have a certain shelf life, and there's constant kind of compromises across the whole food chain. So it's been deeply challenging.
How do you work that stuff through in your head, though? Like, is there part of you that says, let's just like shut all that down and go back to our...
There are times when I definitely feel like that, but I think it's about making incremental changes. And I think the essence of life, the perfection is in the imperfect. And it's about appreciating that perfect doesn't exist. It's about process. It's not about the output.
It's about progress.
And like the essence is to make healthier food more available to people, and healthier options that are high in fibre and that are based on real food. And that's sort of...
Because if our options weren't there, people are going to choose something else, most likely.
Absolutely. So I'm really curious at the 80 products. I knew it was scale, but I didn't realise it's that scale. Like, what am I missing then that I haven't seen? Because I understand the granolas and the hummuses and things.
So we're across 11 different categories. So we've got, there's pestos and hummuses, there's dips, there's our granolas and breakfast cereals. Our mueslis, there's prepared meals, there's soups, there's
pizzas,
tomato
there's
sauce,
burgers,
there's pizzas,
ketchup,
there's burgers, there's snacks, there's granola crunches, there's
drinks,
there's
non-alcoholic beers,
there's vitamin waters, and I'm sure we're missing loads of stuff.
Wow,
but
is just incredible.
There's 80, it sounds like a huge amount, but there's multiple SKUs within the same one. So there's
SKUs, that's a weird word.
Sorry, that's a product word. But there's there's like 6 different pestos, and there's 4 different hummuses, and there's so there's multiple.
But still, it's a hell of a range.
But it's also 20 years. Like, people often go, "Geez, you've done so much," and it's like 20 years is a long time.
20 years.
When you really believe in it and you're really committed to it and to your life's work, stuff happens.
And it's all
like a child.
Iteration.
Watching.
But at the same time, I know there's been things that haven't worked down through the years, and like all people running food and beverage businesses, COVID was an absolute disaster for us here. Certainly, there was outlets you opened that didn't work. How have you kind of processed that side of it, things not working out? Or is it just you said part of the process and you move on?
Yeah, I think failure is inevitable, and I think we live in a society that doesn't celebrate failure, or doesn't see failure as part of the process. Like, you look at a kid learning a language, the reason why it learns a language so quickly is because it makes mistakes. Whereas you look at adults trying to learn a language, they're much more like, oh, I don't want to sound stupid. We become a lot more self-conscious. And I think the nature of anyone trying to achieve anything is that they're going to fall, they're going to hurt themselves, they're going to make mistakes, and all it is feedback that, do it a different way. And that's the very nature of driving. You can't drive in a straight line. It's constantly micro adjustments, and I think that's
or even I did a handstand here before, just to get, we'd sat in a car for 2 hours, so I wanted to get the blood to my head and feel better. And when you're doing a handstand, people think you're just holding yourself there, but you're constantly making micro adjustments with your hands and your weight. And even when we stand still, we're constantly making micro adjustments. So failure is just information back. And I guess we've been very fortunate that, we've always been kind of, I don't care, let's just start something and see what happens, and she will adapt.
And I think one of the main reasons is that we're born identical twins, so we've always had that support. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that famous Simon Sinek video where I think it's titled "How to Start a Movement," and they're at a festival and there's one lunatic dancing and everyone's laughing at him and going, "Oh, lunatic," and Simon's there and commentating on it. Okay, wait for it. The first person isn't the one that's most important to movement. It's the second person. Just wait for it. And you're watching. You're kind of going, he's full of crap. This ain't gonna happen. And then one other person joins, and then suddenly it's mobbed.
It's over a period of time, but within a matter of minutes, everyone's done.
And what's the relevance of that for you? Do you feel like you can kind of validate each other?
I think having support makes life a lot more easy. Being an identical twin, if I'm ever traveling on my own and I'm in the airport, I'd never do handstands or I'd never do stretching in the corner because you feel too self-conscious. But as there's 2 of us doing it, suddenly people looking at us like, what are you looking at?
Or suddenly they kind of feel curious to join as well. It's funny. But even back to your question was about during COVID, we had 4 cafes and we had to close 3 of them. We had one in the airport, which was the world's first plant-based, compostable only outlet in any airport in the world. And so we had to close 3 cafes and lay off loads of people, which was,
It was really
challenging.
hard. Yeah.
And we've had multiple times throughout, like 20 years is a long time, that you've got to constantly adapt to recessions and ups and
The
downs.
externals that you
and
can't
ideas
control.
you started and retract, and so it's been a constant adapting
Yeah.
phase.
And it's hard, but it's these failures that make you appreciate what you have, and like they're hard and they're difficult. And like I remember calling up friends that have worked with us for years and go, listen, we got to lay off. I'm sorry. And it's like you're crying and you're upset, and you feel like, why am I doing this? Like you feel like you want to quit.
But even just to tell one little story, and it was so Steve mentioned that we started our sprout farm. We started that maybe it was 18 years ago, and our brother Dara started that on the back of Granny leaving us 10 grand, and he was delivering. He started selling the Happy Pear, and then it went to a couple of super values, and maybe he was up to maybe 20 shops after a couple of years. And I remember there was a E. coli outbreak in Germany.
I remember that.
A long time ago,
Yeah.
and it completely overnight wiped his sprout business, because the sprouts got blamed, and they were like, I'm not eating those sprouts in case there was E. coli in them.
Yeah.
So immediately he had nothing to sell. So I remember he kind of at the time, he said to Steve, that pesto you make, I wonder could we put that in a tub and try to sell it? It was like, yeah, okay, well, let's try it. And he started selling pesto.
Because at the time, Mum was making maybe 10 tubs a week. It was a recipe that I'd come up, and my granny used to have a vegetable stall at Kiltiernan Country Market, and she used to cut the top of the labels off and hand write sun-dried tomato pesto on them. Little white tubs, and we put them on top of the juice bar. And then you want to pick her up? I interrupted. I just want to create more
context. But it went from where there was a complete failure in terms of Dara had nothing to sell to then he started selling pesto, and now, as we said, it's been the birth of our food products business, which is...
It's such a shame just thinking about it, though, as an airport, traveller like most of us are, I suppose, that you don't have that option to get like really good food in the airport, because like whether you're vegan or vegetarian or whatever, but the healthy food options in airports are just fucking non-existent. Like, it's horrendous in there,
It's hard.
Could you rethink that decision?
No. It's kind of hard. It's hard because particularly in the airport, you're dealing with, it starts at 4 a.m. and staff, and they've got no daylight all day, and they've got there's a 3-month vetting process with them to get in. So it's a really tough environment to manage your own brand within it.
Yeah.
And
because you get messages kind of going, I went to the Happy Pear, your staff weren't so happy, and you feel a bit like,
they're not. They can't literally be our staff because they've got to be vetted by the airport, and there's only certain service providers there. So it's a really challenging.
But we've a similar problem here, I suppose, in the sense that there's always been that pressure on us to replicate this and do it somewhere else, and create that kind of why don't you franchise it? It's the obvious thing to do, and you're there is that tension between trying to scale a business and make it, and it would probably make it all work financially a bit better if you have multiples of them. But at the same time, you lose quality, you lose mission, you lose purpose and ethos, and it's a really tricky thing to manage as the business grows, right?
Yeah, that famous story, the paradox of the Mexican fisherman. I'm sure you've come across that story.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge. Modern day society success is more the accumulation of wealth. And I think for me, over the years, and having gone from starting with a small little fruit and veg shop to having a cafe, and then we had 4 cafes, I found it hard. I remember back about 10 years ago, one Christmas Eve, we were doing a raise. We were raising money to grow the business. At the time, we needed 1 cafe. And I remember we were in FBD and we were around the boardroom. It was Christmas Eve and we'd signed the contract. And Dara left FBD with a cheque for
It was FBD. It was something else.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember. Some finance house. He left with a cheque for $2.5 million in his wallet. And we walked down Grafton Street, and I remember being so nervous.
And it was Christmas Eve, so there was no banks open, so you had to have it in his pocket for 8 days. A check for $2.5 million.
And I remember being absolutely going, I feel like I'm in a movie. What the hell? And
why were you so stressed?
But just $2.5 million, having this, and just the responsibility and something happening. It's a piece of paper. It's not a digital thing that you can go out it's. It just felt like a lot.
You don't want to go to Hogan's for a few pints with a check.
Take a check. Would you take a check, lads?
Will you cash our check? But we'd borrowed that money or raised that money because we wanted to open a number of cafes, and we wanted to make plant-based food a lot more available.
And that was maybe 2018, so it was just before COVID, and
at the time we'd gone from 1 cafe to 2 cafes to 3 cafes to 4 cafes, and externally the business was flying.
Yeah.
When we were now in Waitrose in the UK, the business was flying. We'd gone from a staff of maybe 30 to suddenly a staff of 120, 130. Every time I went down to Pearville, which is our production facility or factory, if you want to call it that, you were meeting new staff and you'd be kind of going, geez, who are you? And who? Yeah, exactly. And
what are we doing this for?
Yeah, and it felt like, what is this? Like, what are we doing this for? Like, and it just didn't feel like our business anymore. So I'm happy to say like that through the really difficult process of having to restructure, now we've 1 cafe and it feels a lot more congruent and a lot more manageable, and it feels a lot more like there's
so
more
it's kind of the
heart to
mothership that you can
and particularly now with the challenge of running a cafe that with VAT rates and minimum wages going up and up, which is great. Living wages are great, but when you're the other side of it as someone employing people, it's made a hard game even harder. It adds another 10% of cost onto your you've suddenly got to make 10% more just to cover your costs,
and you can't in a cafe make 10%
it's really
more.
really hard.
So and the VAT going back up again and all that, I think the next 6 months are going to be absolute carnage in the sector, because it's just not the maths doesn't add up anymore.
No, it doesn't. As there was a great article in the Irish Times or Independent where it said that someone at a cafe, he said, well, I feel like a civil servant without the pension and without the benefits, because I'm just a tax collector and I'm the public face of it, that I get all the slack for, why is a coffee now $4.50? And it's like, well, just because it has to be, because you can't afford to run it other way.
A quick one. Now, I know you get asked on almost every podcast these days to hit that follow or subscribe button, but they never really tell you why that's important. Simply put, if you hit the follow button, it helps us to grow the show, get more great guests, and to reach more people just like you. So it's a small gesture from you that means a huge amount to us. Thanks. Now back to the episode. Can I shift gears a little bit into some of the kind of controversies that have happened, I suppose, and how you've kind of processed those? And I have a very specific view about this, that you shouldn't have to be a doctor to comment on the connection between food and health and all that, right? But there's been a couple of examples where, there's been some controversy about the kind of making claims is the wrong word, because I think there's a lot of proven evidence between the impact of food and your health. But I'm also thinking about the kind of, there can be unintended consequences around making major changes in your diet. I speak from some personal experience that we'll maybe get into a little bit here. It can be a dangerous place to be making, getting people to make these major diet changes without a health professional being there to hold their hands a bit. Like, what's your views on that? Because I know you're really passionate about food and health, but at the same time, there can be unintended consequences for people.
Yeah, like the link between food and health is massive. Like, it really, really is. And as we said earlier, nowadays, like the most mentioned diseases in the Western world are diet related. It really is, and there's loads of stats to back that up. That's not some kind of hippy dippy comment.
The 4 horsemen we were talking about earlier on are all diet related.
Yeah, and unfortunately nowadays in the world we live in, you've got to be very careful. Like, our message has been eat more veg, and ours has come back in 2008. We started running courses upstairs in our cafe, and it came from the idea of, I wonder what happens if we put someone on a plant-based diet. Could it help with reducing heart disease? And that was the whole idea. And it was 2008. There was no social media. We went down to the local doctors. We found a nurse. We offered to pay her €50 to be our nurse for this. We were going to do this 4-week study. And she said she'd take part. And there was no social media. So we literally created posters. We put them on lampposts. We took an ad in the parish bulletin. Reverse heart disease, 4 weeks, skinny, sexy, delicious. This is 2008, so you could say what you wanted. And we had 20 people come along. They signed up to our 4-week experiment. And Angie, the nurse, measured everyone's cholesterol, weight and blood pressure. So we had 3 starting measurements. And they came upstairs to us and we taught them how to cook. And it was, the whole hypothesis was, let's get them to eat porridge for breakfast. Let's get them to eat vegetable soups for lunch or salads. And let's get them to eat like pad thais or Mexican burritos or Indian dals, and let's teach them how to cook. And let's see what happens over 4 weeks. And so we had the starting measurements, cholesterol, weight and blood pressure. And then at the end of 4 weeks, we'd see what happens. Angela, the nurse, took their measurements down the back of the shop by the cabbages. So it was really basic and whatnot. And amazingly, there was an average drop of cholesterol of 20% after 4 weeks. Blood pressure regulated nearly everyone. On average, across the 20 people, they lost 3 kilos. So it was really quite momentous. That ended up becoming the birth of us doing more of them and more of them. And we ended up building online courses. And we now partner with gastroenterologists. We have a gut course where we've had 100,000 people through our courses in 100 different countries. So it's been very impactful about helping people to eat more whole foods. And we partner with a cardiologist for a heart course. We partner with a senior consultant gynecologist to create a menopause course. We even created an erectile dysfunction course with a urologist. So we called it, we didn't release it, but we were planning on calling it Happy Hard-On course because we had these natural Viagra videos on YouTube that have like 6 million views, and then we realized there's a lot of men out there looking for how can I get better erections, and what's the link between diet. So we've tons of experience across these courses of the link between diet and health.
But we've like first-hand experience, like meeting people, looking them in the eye and seeing the output of diet.
But how, I suppose to the question though, how do you feel when a couple of things have blown up over the years? Like I can't even kind of remember the details, but I know there was something around breast cancer and stuff like that. Like how do you feel when that stuff happens?
I guess you realise you made a mistake. We apologise and you kind of move on and you realise that failure is part of the process. And sometimes, the very nature of ecology or ecosystem is the most creative part of any ecosystem is the boundary. It's the edge. Yeah. It's where the river meets the meadow. It's where the meadow meets the sea. It's where the forest meets it's the edge. And I think the nature of anyone who works in a creative process, you're on the edge and it's a delicate balance.
And then even now with everything's so magnified and, the world has got far more transparent and there's a lot more people, it's challenging with messaging. You've got to be much more precise and much more on the nose and stay in your lane and don't wander too far because you'll upset off someone. So it's constantly, you've got to keep adapting for better or for worse. I don't know. It's just the world we live in.
At the same time, these are proven links between food and health. So that's the problem, isn't it? That like you've got this very science-based sort of behavior changes that people can make. To your point, it's not a hugely scientific experiment when the blood measurement's been done down the back of the shop or whatever, but there is loads of peer-reviewed evidence like out there that proves these links. There's a bit of a tension there, I think, between, like, why shouldn't you comment on that, I suppose?
So no, I think it's just hard, and I guess it's sometimes you're challenging systems that are much bigger than you, and you have to respect that, and you kind of have to...
The unintended consequences I just mentioned, like, I suppose I've got really high cholesterol, right? And I have a really good diet, eat loads of fruit and veg, but wanted to kind of deal with that, I suppose, coming to the Sniper Alley kind of age. And like gave up, like went pretty much vegan, not like a few exceptions or whatever, for a year, right? And the unintended consequences for me was twofold. Number one, I lost a load of weight because I wasn't, and I'm a skinny guy anyway. I can't afford to lose weight. So I probably wasn't careful enough about getting the protein I needed into my diet and all that. And it had other consequences that I won't get into too much at home with other people in the family as well, because even though I wasn't forcing the sort of, not eating meat on other people, it kind of happened naturally as a result of sort of, I was doing most of the cooking. That's the kind of point I'm trying to make. I should have done this with the advice of a dietitian who could have told me to make sure you're doing X, Y, Z as well. And my cholesterol went up, which was weird. Wow. So which leads me to believe, look, I've got a genetic problem with cholesterol.
Were we eating lots of cheese?
No, really wasn't like.
Yeah.
So like, I suppose my point is sometimes this dietary advice for certain people won't work or will have other problems.
We certainly found in our Happy Heart course that it was, if we had a room of 100 people, over 4 weeks, 80-something% of them would come down. But there'd always be 15% where they'd be anomalies where it didn't work. So
we've even done our course to medical doctors. We did it to 100 doctors and medical professionals in the southwest of the UK. We did it in Devon.
It was the
in
Southwest
hospitals.
Plant-Based Challenge.
And similar results. 85% of people reduced their cholesterol, blood pressure regulated, people lost weight. Like, it was brilliant. It was really great result. But as you said, there's always exceptions to every rule. And I guess you could be one of those exceptions. And also, like, food is multifaceted. And, eating a vegan diet is very different from eating a whole food plant-based diet. And I guess our message has always been, like, when we first turned plant-based ourselves, as I think when we were sent the questions in this, how do you know you're one of those vegan? It's like someone will tell you very quick enough, you know, that way. You're one of those annoying vegans. So initially we were one of those righteous vegans and we were very preachy, but we realised, like, you attract more wasps with honey rather than vinegar, meaning that make it attractive rather than demonise it by going, why aren't you vegan? What are you doing eating that? And we found the message of eat more veg is a lot more digestible. And by veg, we mean whole foods. And I think irrespective of what ailment people have, I think it's pretty ubiquitous when you advise people to eat more whole foods and to listen to our body.
And even in that one, have you seen that How to Live to 100 on Netflix? And that looks at the 5 blue zones in the world where there's the most amount of people that live over the age of 100. They're not vegan or vegetarian, but 95% plus of what they eat is whole plant foods. So it's kind of... You know, food is, it can be religious, you know, and people, you can really, it's like politics. It's very, people have different views on it. But I think eating more whole foods is the name of the game. And in this crazy industrial food system which we live in, which we're kind of powerless to, where it's so much easier to go get a chocolate bar and a donut and a fried burger than it is to go get healthy plant-based food, you know.
One of the things we were talking about downstairs is kind of nutrient density and how the whole foods are grown or reared can have such an impact as well. And I was saying we're starting a study with SCTU where we'll be trying to measure the carotenoids in people's skin, you know, who are participating in our organic veg box scheme to try and see, like, is there a link between how this veg is grown and the soil it's grown in and people's health and the level of carotenoids in their body. I guess you've gone down a similar path with the organic farm. Do you feel that side of it is important? Like, or is it just eat more veg?
No, it's so important.
Can I go? Yeah. Like, as with anything, that, like, the further you get into, you realise, like, there's a rabbit hole in everything. But we live in a modern day food system which celebrates appearance and shelf life. Like, we've had a fruit and veg shop for 20 years and people will come in and they'll look at it. Does it look good? And will it last long? That's what the food system typically celebrates. It doesn't go, does it taste amazing? It doesn't go, you know, what's the nutrient density? Because we don't have a metric around that. We have a friend coming over to do a course with us this weekend, Dan Kittredge from Massachusetts, and he's developed a device called a spectrometer. And it's a device that came from astronomy, not astrology, which he's kind of adjusted, which that you can flash a light using this device, a spectrometer, and you could go into, say, Super Value across the road and there's an organic carrot and a non-organic carrot, and you can measure the organic one, which is 50 cent extra, and go, what's the nutrient density in this? And it gets a 95%. So it's in the top 95% of healthiest of carrots. And I could measure the other one and go, oh, that's an old 10%. I think it's worth that 50 cent. But modern day, I guess, food system doesn't celebrate nutrient density because at the moment it's at the gross level of vegetables or refined food.
You only get nutrient density when you've got plant immunity, you've got great taste, and nutrient density is all related to the soil. It's all back to the healthy
and it's hard
soil.
work.
And as you know, with GIY, like, you know, if you're growing without fertilizers and NPK inputs, like, you know, it's all about the soil. It's all about the microbes, because microbes are 4.5 billion years old. Plants are 350 million years old. So they are the masters. They are the ones, you make them happy and the plants tend to prosper. So we're very much on that journey.
I read a thing recently that said actually that, you know, to your point, Stephen, about like the fertilizer use and all of that, and people wanting veg that looks perfect and all that, that actually you should be seeking out the particularly greens that have been attacked by pests, because the plant has to produce more polyphenols and all that and that makes it healthier for you, which is totally counterintuitive to the way we look at veg. We'd be like, that's got a hole in it, I don't want it.
Well, when you grow veg yourself, you realise, oh my God, how do they get it to be so perfect in a shop? Like, because when you grow it yourself, there's so many, you know, so much competition for your food.
Yeah.
You know, but what we found is that when we get our soil really healthy, really, really healthy, plant immunity, like the plants, they become really, really healthy and vital. And as a result, a lot of insects which previously would have eaten them before, it's not food for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think are kind of, I mean, I think the misconceptions about plant-based eating have changed to a degree, but what do you think are the most common misconceptions out there still?
Protein is still the biggest one.
You know, and that's why this book, we've really tried to take our 100 most popular recipes, like a number of them have millions of views, and to try to really refine them and make them easy and accessible, and to address many of the myths, like it's really expensive. In essence, what we're recommending people to eat, it's peasant food.
Yeah.
It's lentils, it's beans, it's brown rice, it's wholemeal pasta. Like, it's seldom you leave Super Value and go, oh my God, those lentils were mad money.
Yeah.
You know, it's the cheap, it's affordable stuff. Like, a lot of our recipes will be like, feed yourself and your family for €5 for the meal, and it's packed full of fibre, so it's much more likely to fill you up. I think other big myths are protein. And if you think protein is for growth and repair, and if you look at the human life cycle, the time when we grow most is a newborn baby. A newborn baby will double in a matter of months. So you think the natural food for a newborn baby mammal is its mother's milk. And if you look at the protein content of breast milk, you'd probably think it's really, really high. You'd probably, you'd be logical to go, oh, it must be packed full of protein. So the average protein per diet in Ireland is around 20 to 35% of all calories is protein. That's the average for a full-grown mammal. Whereas you look at the protein content of breast milk, it's around 9%. So it's quite low. So our protein requirements really aren't that high. And most people in Ireland and in the UK, provided you're eating enough calories and you're eating some degree of diversity, will be getting more than enough protein. And protein is an inefficient fuel source.
And even what I would say in that protein one is, have you ever heard of anyone calling in sick to say, sorry, I can't come to work, I just didn't get enough protein? Protein deficiency. Like, it's not something you hear of, but yet we're absolutely obsessed with it. It's in everything. Protein is protein that. It's very difficult not to get enough protein.
But regularly, like this is even an anecdotal story. We went into the Dáil and we were meeting Simon Harris back when he was Minister for Health, and I was trying to launch a healthy eating curriculum, and I wanted to get it in all schools in Ireland, and I wanted to launch it in my daughter's school, which was St. Bridget's National School. And I remember going in and I met Sister Kathleen. Sister Kathleen had been a principal there for what seemed 500 years. She was a stalwart, formidable, kind lady. And I was sitting down chatting with her, and I said the word fibre, and she lit up and she got turned on. I was like, geez, what the hell's going on here? She's turned on with the word fibre. And as we talked further, she said, in her career up till recent 10 years ago, fibre was never an issue. But she said every week over the last 10 years, since diet has changed, 2 kids will go home sick due to constipation, because they are not eating enough fibre. And I think one right now, where this podcast is being recorded in October, Halloween is coming up. When we grew up as kids and we'd go out trick-or-treating, you'd get monkey nuts, you'd get apples, you'd get mandarins. You might come home with a handful of sweets. When I bring my kids out trick-or-treating now, they leave with 5 kilos of junk, and if they get an apple, they throw it at each other. And it's just, I have to steal the bag off them and go, no. But it's just, our food system has changed radically, and it's hard to eat healthy.
I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. 60% of the calories that teenagers take in are from ultra-processed foods now.
I think it'd be as high as 80.
Yeah, well, I think it's 60 in Ireland, which is like, I go into like petrol station or whatever, like queuing up to pay for your fuel or whatever, and
you're
it's
going
like
through
the gauntlet.
Yeah, exactly, the gauntlet of ultra
chocolate bars and sweets,
junk.
and it's very enticing if you're feeling a little off. Like, they all look very attractive.
It's very difficult to ignore it and to walk past it. But like our teenagers, particularly, I think maybe I'm just focused on this because my own kids are that age, but like they're in, Donald O'Shea calls it an obesogenic environment, like. Yeah. And I sometimes think, like, what the fuck are we? Like, we're trying to get people growing their own food. You guys are doing an amazing job, but we're losing the battle, actually.
100%. We've been 20 years in business, and I thought when we started out, we're going to really have a big impact. Like, this is a revolution. We're going to change the world. And now 20 years in, I find myself becoming a little bit cynical. I'm an idealist at my core, and I think that's because, as Donald O'Shea's, we live in this obesogenic environment, which is a fancy word to say it's easier to eat more calories than it is just to eat what you need. And I think a perfect example is that back in the 1950s, about 1% of the population were obese. Nowadays, it's around 28% are obese, because it's not willpower. It's not because we've got less willpower, and we probably move more than we did then. It's really just the food has changed, the system has changed, and we are kind of powerless against it. Yeah. So I think, like, a message for anyone out there who's feeling, ill health due to diet and they're overweight, in many cases, it's not your fault. And I think the biggest thing is that if you do want to change and you do want to become healthier, we're all a product of our environment. So like when we first started the Happy Pear, ultimately at the most selfish level, we had changed our diet and lifestyle so much. We, as Dave said, we left as these meat-eating, pint-swilling jocks, and we came back these hippies that loved eating lentils and were eating a plant-based diet. And we knew in our hometown of Greystones, we were weirdos. We were not going to survive at this. We were like two plant-based people, the only two that I knew of. And I knew our brother, a friend of Gavin Keller, who was Dave's mate growing up, his brother was a vegan. And I remember he was the weird vegan that everyone used to slag. And I remember coming home and picking up the phone and calling Gav, "How are you, Gav? Just wondering, is Andy there?" And he said, "What do you want to talk to Andy about? Just put Andy on." And Andy got on the phone and was like, "How are you, Andy? Steve here from Dave and Steve, Gav's mate. Just wondering, could we meet up and talk about what it's like to be vegan in Greystones? Because we're eating a vegan diet now." And we met up, him and Andy Godfrey and me and Dave, and we talked about what it was to be vegan. And ultimately, if I look at the most selfish level, why we started the Happy Pear, it was we wanted to create a community that was going to support us to live the healthy life that we wanted. A community that would encourage eating more plant-based foods, would enjoy an active outdoor life. And I think for anyone listening who does want to become healthier, get healthy mates, join a running club, befriend the local vegetarian or vegan and go, "Hey, you know what to do with vegetables, or come to Grow HQ."
Because statistically you're going to eat more veg, you know, if your friends are, you know, and if I look at our life now 20 years on, like most of our friends eat plant-based, or, you know, they're that way inclined, and when you hang out you're doing exercise type things, or, you know, so it's, you become the product of the people you surround yourself with.
And that lifestyle, the pictures of you down swimming in Greystones at 5 a.m, all that stuff, like, is the handstands, it's all kind of part of the movement, I suppose.
And it's not a show. Like, it's really, whether there was anyone looking or not, we'd still be doing it. That's the thing, you know. And like even this morning, you know, like you went for a dip at 7 a.m. in the dark.
There's about 50 people on the beach in the dark. Like literally, I was gone 7 a.m. It's in the dark. Sunrise now is 7:58, so it's 8. You know, it's pushing 8 a.m. So at 7 a.m. it was dark. Like it was dark, and there's a full moon, so there's a bit of a little light hue. And I remember thinking, I'm going to be down there on my own. And I get down to the cove, which is traditionally it's known as Ladies' Cove, because in Victorian times this was where the women swam and the men's was the other side of Greystones. And I went down. There was about 50 people, and it was like, it was amazing. Like it was beautiful, and getting into the kind of dark water on your own, because everyone's in their little groups, and I was kind of down because I knew I had to drive down here, so I needed a quick swim, and you get into this dark water on your own, feeling a bit like a lunatic and going, what the hell am I doing this for? And like, am I like self-flagellating, or what's the story here? And you come out of the water and immediately back to the present moment. Suddenly it's like, for me, it's like baptizing in gratitude. You come out feeling like very present, very grateful that I endured that cold water, but there's a feeling of ease. And I think, you know, for anyone who's fed up hearing the benefits of cold water, I think for me, the bit that's I've got most out of swimming in the sea is the friendship. And I think, you know, if you look, as Dave mentioned, the blue zones earlier, the 5 places in the world where it's the longest living populations. And there were 9 factors that predicated why they lived such long, happy lives. And one of them was diet, as Dave mentioned, 95% whole plant foods. But if they were to boil those 9 factors down to one, the most important thing for a long, healthy, happy life, it's community. And when we swim in the sea, the bit that makes it most enjoyable, it's not the benefits of cold water therapy. It's like if I stand on the beach in a pair of togs in January with the king, with the queen, with the bin man, with the bin lady, with a dentist, you're all shitting yourself. You don't want to get in. It's cold. And you're all united in your fear. And you come out feeling jubilant, and your oxytocin levels are higher, which is your connection hormone. And you form amazing friendships. And friendships are not based on what you do for a living. There's people I've hung around with for 10 years on the beach. I don't know what the hell they do for a living, but it's based on the moment, and it's beautiful. And
that's
I think
class. I love that.
Yes.
We're nearly out of time, but I want to ask a couple of questions before we finish. One is just what's next? Like, you're in a reflective mode at the minute with 20 years, this amazing book that is sitting in front of us, but like, what's next for you guys? Do you have a sense of that?
Couple of things. Yeah, we just, like, I think it was 18 months ago, we raised 2.5 million. We sold off 18% of the Happy Pear to our community. We did a community equity crowdfund, and we raised 2.5 million to launch our food products in the UK.
Wow.
So that's the number one focus. So we're over there quite a bit, getting listings. I think we're in about 100 stores, and we're building and working on that.
So and then concurrently, we were like indirectly we were like asked to be in a TV show, and that didn't work out. But now we've
I was going to ask you that question. How have you not had a TV show?
There's been so many pitches, and even last year we were filming one with an American lady and a director, and it was great, but we haven't found the right distributor yet. But can I keep going?
Yeah, go for it.
Excuse me. But we've a US management team, and we were invited over to Boston and New York, and we were doing work with an American supermarket, and we were cooking on the Today Show. So we were cooking with Roger Federer was on the show that day, and Steph Curry, and here we were, two Irish lads that started with a vegetable shop in a little red van, and 20 years later you're cooking on the Today Show to 10 million people. And I remember going on, I was shitting myself, excuse my language, but I felt like I didn't want to let the parish down, the way this was an opportunity. This was wonderful,
especially with Federer there. Jesus Christ,
it felt like a real moment, one of those moments. Here we were in Times Square, just down the road from Times Square. We were in 30 Rockefeller Center. We were in the Rockefeller building. You're cooking on the biggest daytime television show in America, and here we were, me and Dave, cooking, and it was one of those moments, those pinch yourself moments. And I think we found that in America, like, I guess it's even more magnified than Ireland, the need for people to eat more whole plant foods. So we find ourselves being drawn there, but UK is largely our focus.
Okay, so we might see on TV
maybe
in the future, and definitely we're going to see in more products, more supermarkets. All of that side of it is going to continue.
Yeah, very much focused in the UK. That's because it's a much bigger market.
And we're we're in about 800 stores with Super Value and Centra, and they're a joy to work with.
Yeah,
and we're kind of constantly iterating and finding out where are the points where we can help people to eat more veg.
Yeah, we also work with Super Value. You probably noticed they sponsor our primary schools food growing program called Let's Grow every year, so they've been great partners for us as well. So I think gene pool wise, it's it's important to be working. If you're going to engage with the mainstream, you need to be working with someone that shares your ethos at least.
Very much so.
Yeah,
we love them.
So our closing tradition here is we always ask the question, why does food matters? And I'm going to ask each of you to answer it.
I think food is a way to connect. It connects us with everything. It connects us with every aspect of life, and I can choose to eat one type of food or another, and I'm supporting a completely different food system. So I think it connects us to the land and then connects us to ourselves. It's very different whether I eat something, if I horse something into me out of a bag while I'm walking in the street, or if I sit and really appreciate it. It's very different. So it can connect me to myself, and then it can connect me to others. It's like there's nothing quite like sharing a meal with someone and sitting and spending time. So I think food is one of the greatest pleasures of life.
I think food, like to tell one.
Steve's going to try beat it now.
Here
he goes.
Here you go. Come on, the mother is listening, waiting to see which twin she loves the most.
A friend, Harold, I remember him telling a story where he went to Central Africa doing charity work when he was in his early 20s, and he talked about how, coming from London, he would often get his lunch and walk down the road eating his lunch, and he couldn't get over how every time he did that, every car that drove by would beep the horn going like, what are you doing? Sit down. Eating is a sacred act. It's an opportunity to connect with the landscape. It's an opportunity to get present with who grew your food, where it came from. Because we live in an age where many people are struggling with connection, struggling with meaning, struggling with purpose. And I think food gives you that opportunity, that agency with which you can create the world you want to see. And it's like nowadays we live in democracy, and, there's the US elections coming, and people can feel powerless to these bigger forces. And yes, there are bigger forces, but every single person changes the world. And even if you do nothing, you change the world simply by existing. And I think your food choices are one of the biggest act of agency you can have. You can choose food that nourishes the local land, that's grown organically, that's grown to create more biodiversity. Or you can choose food that was industrial produced in a monocrop, sprayed with poisons. The byproduct was ecosystem damage, biodiversity loss. Food is one of the greatest things you can be conscious of. To me, food is life. Food is an opportunity. Even like yesterday, I was in the studio, and Kiva was away and Dave was away, and I was going to have lunch, and there was very little around the studio, and there was a pumpkin there, a Crown Prince pumpkin. I chopped it up, roasted it, took it out, and I was sitting down, just a big plate of pumpkin, and I was right, I'm putting away my laptop, I'm putting away my phone, and I'm going to sit and I'm going to mindfully eat this pumpkin. And I think I found it really hard. I was twitching. I was dying to look at my phone. I was dying to look at the screens like anyone. But I think food gives you that opportunity to connect with the landscape, that opportunity to show gratitude with who grew it. Like, because it literally took every single person in the world to get that pumpkin to you. And I think food is food is so important, and food is, to me, is love.
Mine was fluff compared to that. That's good.
We used to do a mindful eating course in this very room, actually, that we're sitting in, and we'd have about 20 or 25 people sitting down for lunch. And the rule was you had to do it in silence, and you had to sort of eat. And there was a guide to sort of, before you started, to talk you through what you should be focusing on, the flavour and the
How
smell.
many chews per minute?
Yeah, and people would be like, that was the most uncomfortable experience of my life. To your point about kind of, twitching, like that people felt really uneasy about it all, So it's so rare that we do actually stop and really experience food the way it should be experienced, I think.
Yeah, and that's why I really admire your work, trying to help people to grow their own food, because we live in a society where, our parents would have known where their food came from, would have known who grew it, would have known how it was made. I go to Poland, my wife is Polish, and I go there and they grow all their own food, and you go into their piwnica, which is their basement, it's full of jars of pickles and fermented and everything, and it's like they're part of the landscape. And we forget that we're mammals, that we are animals, we're part of the animal kingdom, and albeit we're sophisticated mammals, but like our connection to our food system is what we've done for most of human life. So it's natural we feel disconnected, and it's natural that we feel lost. But getting your hands in the ground and growing your own food, it's beautiful.
And particularly at a time where food insecurity is a real thing. COVID and the war have made that apparent, that it's, food security is quite important. And if you know how to grow something, it's going to be quite an important skill over the next number of decades, I would think.
I totally agree. David and Stephen Flynn, it's been an absolute joy having you here, and congratulations on the book. It's called The Happy Pear, 20 Recipes and Learnings from the First 20 Years. Hope the next 20 are as successful. And I hope, genuinely hope, you're really, really proud of what you've achieved. You should be. It's fantastic. It's such important work that to be pushing against the tide, as we were talking about earlier on. So thanks a million for coming, and look forward to whatever the next chapter is for you guys.
Thanks, Mike. I really, really appreciate it.
As always, I want to say that we could not do Food Matters without our amazing team. Our producer and editor is Patrick Haughey. Pre-production, guest research and booking by Caroline Hennessy. Marketing, PR and social is done by the amazing GIY marketing team of Jen Langan, Catherine Keary and Susanna Phillip. Finally, thanks to each and every one of you for listening. Do please get in touch with us if you've got any feedback. We absolutely love hearing from you. And we're looking forward to your company on the next episode of Food Matters.